What's up, guys?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the 11 a.m. studios. Thank you for joining us today. Big day in the Chex world. Big day in the Animoca world. Lots to get into. Not a whole lot of time here, so I think let's just start off the bat because Chex is something that very recently came across my radar. Probably new to a lot of people. Some really big names behind it. But Chev, maybe you want to start us off here by sharing sort of the opportunity you see Chex stepping into.
Definitely. So thank you very much for having me. Typically, when I hop onto spaces or live stream, I bring honor to Jesus' name because he saved my life from cancer last year. So I always want to bring honor to him. And
All right.
but yeah, I'm super grateful to still be alive and to be able to build this together with people I love and people that share the same vision.
I think that's our
So
first,
basically,
our first Jesus shout out. So this is
Yeah.
yeah.
this is a first. Thank you.
Bullish.
Yeah. But basically, we started Anichess 3 years ago. Uh, Started with the chess.com partnership, with the Magnus Carlsen on board, and also trying to bring the 200 million of chess lovers on chain. And then because I personally come from a chess background. I started playing chess when I was 6, but I peaked when I was 8. Right, like that's the that's the struggle, right? And then I spent I think 20 years of my life into gaming. Past 4 or 5 years into just online poker, deep into the rabbit hole. Um, was top 100 poker players in Hong Kong. So any chess and the whole Czech idea, it's really a combination, right, between gaming, esports, and also poker. It's basically chess but with a drop of magic, right? So when you think about it, it's like we playing a chess game, but now I have this spell and this power up, just like Harry Potter chess, right? Like you can use this spell to make a piece invisible, or you can use this power up on a spell just to make it more fun. So it actually solves a few issues, right? One is it kind of makes the game uncheatable in a way because chess has been around for so long and AI is so prevalent where if you put money on the line, if you have a $1 million crypto prize pool, everyone would just be cheating, right? But now with the added addition of spell layer and spell mechanics, it almost become impossible to cheat, and that's why um, using check is one of the main burns of using check and main utility of using check in game is to reimagine that to bring forth that online poker environment into the chess scene.
So
So,
I see you describe
so that
Check
is
as a
one.
strategy token, and a strategy token, I
Yeah.
think, has sort of emerged as to mean something different than the way that you're using it here. So can you maybe highlight what a strategy token is in the context of
Yeah,
Chex?
definitely. So Anichess is just the launch partner, right? And what we're building is an ecosystem of games and also projects that really empowers the next generation of strategic thinkers, right? So imagine we will have what we call the fight check platform for people to be fight coding and building their games. Um, and then with the help of AI to be like just a quick example, the team back in Hong Kong, we just launched a new game called King's Gambit, use fight coding within a few weeks, right? And not only internally we're gonna push new games, but the community can also be empowered to create their own games. And at the end of the day, the whole check token will be powering the entire ecosystem of games, right?
Got it.
So
Okay,
that
and
is
so
how we, yeah,
that,
go
that makes
ahead.
sense. I'm very curious. Obviously, I think yesterday began the initiation of an Aerodrome pool. Aerodrome has been a team that we've been following quite a bit through a few of their other launches because we still maintain that sort of bringing a token to market is one of like the continues to seem to be the unsolved, or maybe forever unsolved and iterating challenge for all founders that are launching tokens. Too, I know that you guys recently just bought and mega locked a whole bunch of VE Aero tokens there. So I'm curious if you can maybe comment on the opportunity you see with the Aerodrome launch. What is it solving? And I'm sure everybody knows Animoca, but you guys, I think in looking at some of the news articles, have been described as an altcoin conglomerate. So my sense is that you guys have been involved in a hell of a lot of token launches, and there's some insight behind this.
Yeah, I mean, we've been involved in so many token launches really since, I would say, 2019, 2020, really. I mean, emerging originally, I guess, with NFTs and gaming is kind of how we cut our teeth. But we have over 620 portfolio companies. We support and advise them in terms of how to launch tokens. And maybe just before I even go there, the way that we think of tokens is really sort of the network property or the network asset or whatever system you're building, whether it's a community, whether it's a game, whether it's a product, whether it's a service. They bind essentially the economy because it's, the transaction layer and therefore the social bindings, in the same way that money is a transaction layer, but is actually social bindings for the world, right? So that's kind of how we think about tokens.
I feel like we are aligned there, sir.
Yeah, I think most of us would be in our industry. But by the way, for people who are not in crypto, it's sometimes difficult for them to understand that because, they don't understand that actually these are just units of essentially sort of, social exchanges, as it were. Like we think of money as the OG social network, as it were, right? Anyway, so to that effect, how you launch it is important because you're really building community and network effects. And I think we lost sort of a lot of that meaning back in the early days when, there was, because of the fact that there's a property effect, there is money involved. And it basically, means that people were using it as tools for fundraising, which in and of itself is not a problem. But in so doing, you're giving away the network to people who are not necessarily aligned, right? And one of the things that's interesting for us, which you may not know, but I think in 2020 we launched, I think, one of the very first fair launches, certainly for a Web3 game called Tower. It was a pure DEX launch on Uniswap back in the day. So there was no VAero, no locking, nothing, because it didn't exist, right? And we just launched it as a completely sort of DEX launch, entirely basically as a fair launch. And, it got a lot of traction and interest. And to this day, it's never had investor sales and so forth. And it's not a big token, right? But that wasn't the point, right? The point was just to sort of understand how to build network effects from communities from the ground up, and got to learn basically the mechanics of the bonding curve, because the liquidity was not as much back then because we were a much smaller company. There are all these things that we learned, right? But the big thing is, of course, is that we're trying to launch a token in a way that sort of helps sort of grow user first. Not every token is supposed to be sort of sold to investors, shall we say, right? In that sense. And you should sell it to people who are aligned with you, ideally. I know that's hard, but that would be the idea. And I think that's where token launches struggle, because every step of the way, there are elements of extraction because people are effectively paying rent for access, whether this is a centralized exchange, whether this is even a DEX, right, where you have to sort of grease liquidity, whether it's a influencer you have to pay to get promotion. You have to surrender parts of your network to make them a co-participant in a way so that they will align with you, even if they only align with you for 5 minutes, okay, right? But they do align with you for that moment, and you use them and you spend it that way, right? But it is a liability, right? And that's the struggle, because when you're giving out a piece of your network, you're actually essentially doing it on credit, and the user has it on credit, the KOL has it on credit, if there's an exchange fee, they have it on credit, right? And then of course, they call in the liability and they basically start cashing in, and oops, token starts doing this. So this is the part that everyone struggles with, because you are basically immediately in the field of game theory, right? And so, why do we do Aerodrome, right? We felt that Aerodrome was sort of one further step in creating a somewhat more democratic way, an open and transparent way in which people can sort of do a token launch, which is actually one where you can see where everything happens, right? We're not quite there yet in terms of reputation. That's what we're trying to do with Mochaverse, where eventually we can start to score your activity on chain to then justify maybe more airdrops or something like that. We'll get to that. But it's like things like that we have to keep innovating around. And when with the locked VAero, it's a smart ecosystem sort of design around sort of you want to have more voting power, you got to stake it longer, right? That makes sense, right? Shows your commitment, right? And then of course you have a sort of reward mechanism that's very powerful for those who have sort of Aero. And then, of course, it gives the incentives to basically provide liquidity from a very sort of user perspective, or a, like, I guess, whoever's providing the liquidity, because then they can get those incentives, get paid, which, by the way, is how, exchanges get paid through like exchange fees and so on. Basically, the fees basically just get paid to whoever provides liquidity. So I find that quite attractive. This model didn't make as much sense before, because when we did the Uniswap launch, it was okay, but it was quite small liquidity because the world wasn't that on chain. DeFi summer had just started, right? Whereas today,
L1 launches, baby. Let's go. Pay me $100 to go buy something. We love that. Take me back. Don't
yeah, exactly, right? Now it's totally different. And I think in many ways, Solana initially basically sort of showed the way with the meme coins, not the meme coins in and of itself, but the fact that essentially, with Meteor, Radium, Jupiter, all of these things, basically just exploded in terms of volume. You said, hey, hold on a second, that's interesting. How that's done, and so it emerged from that. Yeah,
Chev, I'm really curious what your expectations are from Aero. Like, how are you measuring success from this? What is, because this is the thing that I'm really trying to get a sense of, because I think there is a sort of liminal space between like sex listing and just maybe the ideal future. I'm not sure I'm fully bought in that Aerodrome stakers are actually really great long-term holders of this token. So like,
no,
right, and so I think I want to put it in the right bucket here.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that just because you're just because you're an Aerodrome holder doesn't mean that you're aligned with the project. They might be.
So what is the outcome that you're like?
Right?
What's success here then?
Yeah, but just before I go there, the difference is, though, it's still a much more democratic process in terms of the voting process, right? Which means that there's an opportunity to pitch to them whether they want it or not. And then you can also have an opportunity to tell them why you should hold the token, because it's longer term aligned as opposed to dumping it, that kind of stuff. Right. You're not dealing with a central party, you're dealing with multiple parties. And if a third of them sell, fine. If 90% sell, I guess fine, just means you failed in the sales job.
Have to play with here, not like the
right? Yeah, exactly. But it is still an exchange value, right? If they see value in what you're building, they might say, you know what, I'm going to hold on to that, or I like you, or I like the product, right?
So I'm really interested in the founder perspective here, because I think you've invested years of your life into this. This is a very, very big moment for you, which congratulations for getting to. But I'm curious, in your mind, what is the expectation here? What does success look like here?
Yeah, I mean, success, one, I think attention. That's a really important one, right? And lasting attention based on basically these network effects. And network effects are initially measured in terms of depth of liquidity and speed of liquidity. Is a form of network effect. It's not. Just to be clear, that's not the only thing we want, but that's how you see it. Because often the people who hold the token aren't necessarily ones who use the product. We've certainly experienced that with sort of crypto gaming. And then you bring in the gamers themselves or the users themselves that then start to use the token, and you create sort of that flywheel, right? But basically in the beginning, we're looking really for volume and liquidity and action that way, right? And then I think and of course, if there is a lot of liquidity, then value accrual will come. And just so you understand how we think about value accrual, we're not thinking specifically that value has to accrue, basically to some kind of billion-dollar token just because, it comes from the network effects that build from it, right? So if there is 1 million buyers, the value will go up because there's demand for it. If there's 10,000 buyers, maybe the value won't go up, right? And that's it, right? And that's kind of part of the sort of setup.
Yeah, I assume you guys have been kind of students of the first few launches that have come out on Aerodrome. I think looking at their charts post-launch, it's kind of hard to see them as successes. So I'm curious what you've learned from those, or what you need to adapt for yours, or maybe you would push back and say that they were successful.
So I think every launch is a lesson, just to be clear, right? And also you have to also look at each project is slightly different, right? And you have to also, and the crazy thing about sort of our world is that whatever worked 6 months ago doesn't work now, or if it worked 3 months ago, it doesn't work now, because the entire meta has changed, right? So for instance, one example of a meta that is different now than it was before is that even though this is a DEX launch, actually we also on the back have to pitch to institutions, because we think this is the institutional era of crypto. Right? What that means is that a token launch can't really be successful unless you have an institution behind you, which, by the way, was different from a year ago or a year and a half ago, where it's like basically literally fuck the institution. It's all about users, right? I mean, that's the whole meme
Be my
coin
friends
thing,
now,
right?
please.
Yeah.
I mean, can you say more on what that means to have an institution behind you? Is that kind of lining up institutional buyers post
Yes,
TG?
absolutely. That's right. So aligning institution management, we won't say who they are, right? Because but they're coming in to say, hey, I want to buy this project, see what the pricing is because it's attractive. So rather than do, like phase one was, you go as like phase one, first iteration, sell tokens to institutions directly, right? You just you sell it to them directly in some kind of pre-sale at some kind of discount, right? That's kind of one way to do it, right? Or don't sell them enough, just sell them a little bit now. It's a kind of the model where they want more, but they can't get more. But we say, hey, look, you know what? We're launching the token in a way where the FTV is attractive. You'll have an opportunity to buy if you want, right? So you'll still get it at the price that you want, hopefully, right? But you just got to play with everyone else because they do want to accumulate, right? And that's not that different when you think about IPOs as well. When you launch an IPO, you actually need institutional backing as well, right? The reason why the US market has the deepest capital pool is because you have the institutions. So I often give this example between the Taiwan Stock Exchange and the US Stock Exchange. And not to knock on Taiwan, but it's all retail. And it's got some of the biggest companies in the world, at least, not biggest, but there's lots of companies that are very technology oriented and theoretically have good value, right? But it literally trades like meme coins, up and down, up and down, up and down, because it's predominantly retail, right? Which is kind of what you see in crypto, right? However, once you get the institution come in who have a long-term view on things, then you have a little bit more stability. I mean, everyone's like, shedding tears when Bitcoin kind of briefly went below 100K. But hey, the stuff that happened 2-3 weeks ago, if it wasn't for the institution, Bitcoin would slide way more than that, right? It would slide more like the other altcoins that do not have institutional backing, right? So that's kind of the thing. So we're experimenting around this type of stuff. We're creating different backing and creating different models around it as well, right? That's an example of something different. And frankly, we're not the only ones doing this, just so you understand. Other people are doing it as well. They just don't report it. Right?
I mean, I'm very interested in what those institutional conversations look like, especially doing a launch like this where it's completely uncertain where the price is going to be in, post TGE or in 7 days. Like, what do the conversations with these institutions look like? And do they have price targets? Like, how do you approach that?
I mean, it's pricing what they want to come in at a price point, right? So the old token sale might be, some series C, Series A, Series B, whatever. Value goes up. Like, for instance, they look at the underlying of the potential of the project and they say it's worth 20 million or 30 million or 50 million, right? Which means that's what they're willing to pay for. Not more than that, but they're willing to pay for that. In the same way that you would have sold it to them in a pre-sale and you would have gotten the money for that. And there's a negotiation. So they say, I want to buy up to X million, right? You have that. If it's an exciting project, they'll buy it, right? And so when you launch it at a relatively low FTV, the buyer isn't just the user. That's a narrative that people say, right? But actually the buyer can be just as much an institution.
Go on a wealth generation journey with your community and your favorite institutions.
Well, there's a lot more institutions, and the institutions include people like us. I mean, we're active liquid token buyers, not just with Arrow, but with all sorts of things that we have conviction in, right?
You're the altcoin conglomerate that's about to go be publicly listed on the NASDAQ next year, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct as well, right? And the same goes true for other ones that we talk to. And our job, what we do at Animoca, is we've been spending a lot of time bringing institutions into the ecosystems, right? And then we help them, or they use another market maker to buy. It doesn't really matter. We don't really care. It's up to them. But now they're part of that flywheel, and they get to participate at that level.
All right. Last question here, and Chev, I want you to. I mean, again, you've been hustling on this for years, investing all of your heartbeats into this big moment, but also these moments are more, a starting gun again than an ending spot. What are you most excited about over the next couple of weeks and months from the Anichess world? Sorry, brother. This is awful. I think we have a bit of a tech problem. Maybe we'll bring you back on so we can actually dive in. I think it's really interesting to dive into the institutional world. Yeah, sorry, brother. Just going to send you good vibes today as you go through your launch. I know you got a couple of days left in the Aerodrome initiation pool. We'll make sure that we have some links and stuff for people to go follow. And just so you guys know, we launched yesterday. 11 a.m. has a token. It's called 11 a.m. We launched 11 a.m. strategy. What we do is we get to come and get exposure using our trading fees to the guests and the tokens that come on to the show. So I look forward to being able to be along the journey with you guys here soon. Yatsu, thank you for hanging out with us today, man. Best of luck as you build the going public is going to be a whole other journey. Maybe we can touch in with you again on that at some point. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us today, and best of luck in the coming days, and apologies for the tech issues here, sir.
No problem. Thank you so much for your time.
Peace, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.